to do another video. I've come up with some ideas for other videos to do in regards to D&D based on my own campaign, my own experience as a DM. If you watched the first video, as I said, I've played since 1978, 4th grade when I first got into D&D, thanks to a friend of mine who let me borrow the player's handbook after our 4th grade teacher had read The Hobbit to the class, and he introduced me to D&D and was basically like, it's not a board game, it's just you are a storyteller or a player, and you have people who play with you, and they have characters that do random things. So that began my journey into D&D. I was obsessed with D&D. What this video, what I imagine this whole video series will primarily focus on is being a dungeon master. Being a player is fairly easy. You have the DM telling you what the situation is, and your character is reacting accordingly. Being the DM, however, is a much more difficult thing to do, and that's why I thought I would do these videos based off of that. Just ideas, tips, and things that I've experienced as a DM myself. So there you are. You're the dungeon master. You have you have your 4, 8, 7, whatever amount of friends who are playing D&D with you. You're the dungeon master. You have spent countless hours planning out an adventure. You've got it lined up that they're going to meet this person to weaken this great big monster that's really difficult to beat without this artifact. That kind of idea. So you've spent all this time planning all this, right? You've got this whole adventure lined up. It's great. This is going to be incredible. You are about to wow your players. But what happens when one of your players, or all of your players, do something that you, as a DM, did not predict would happen? I promise you, every DM who has ever DM'd a game has had this happen, where they've had an adventure lined up, but the party does something that they did not anticipate. One of the most important things, I think, as a DM, is to not override what your players can do. Obviously, you stick within the realistic, as much as D&D can be, the realistic rules of the game. So, for example, if they want to fly and they don't have wings, you're not going to give them that option. But if you have this adventure lined up and they kind of do something that kind of offshoots from what you had planned, one thing I do not like to do is railroad the game. I don't like to set up blocks that say, oh, you know what, you're going somewhere where I don't want, so we're going to make you go back over here. I hate doing that because that takes away the choice of the players. The players should feel like that they have an open range to do whatever they want. You may have something great and fabulous planned out, but if they've done something to kind of go off that beaten trail, you as a DM should be able to quickly improvise and make things go accordingly. Now, I'm going to give an example of when this just recently happened. So I'm going to use one of my own games as an example. As you know, from if you watched my previous video, I'm currently DMing for a group of people who've never played D&D. We have Amy, who is playing a dwarf wizard. We have her husband, David, who is playing a dragonborn barbarian. We have their friend, Albert, who is playing, I believe it's a wood elf ranger. It's the race I don't remember, but he's definitely a ranger. And at the time, Brad's not in the game yet. So we have Melinda, who's next, and she is playing a halfling bard. And then we have Jessica, who's playing a high elf cleric. And then we have Anita, who is a gnome who's multi-classed into ranger/rogue. At this time, they're level 2. As I said from my previous video, essentially they've all sailed to this new continent because there's wonderful things being discovered here. Plenty of opportunity for adventurers to gain fame and fortune. So they've done some adventures around the Ivory Coast and kind of gotten the lay of the land surrounding this initial town. So I give Jessica, her character, I give her a vision during her sleep of an angelic being coming down saying, hey, there's a dryad that's about to be killed. It's about to be sacrificed to unleash a great evil. This is going to happen in 3 days. You must get there and stop it. You are my closest agents of good, and it is your duty to save this dryad, because dryads and unicorns are sacred in this world. So, you would think that being given a message from an angelic being, when you are a cleric, that the party would go with this quest. And they did. So they started asking around, and they learned that the Jade Forest, where this is all happening, is 7 days away. Obviously, they're not going to make it in time if they just like go by foot. The idea is they have some money, but not a lot of money. So I'm wanting them to buy horses and steeds and stuff like that. And I was gonna, get them so that they have steeds and move a little faster throughout the land. But Anita, who has control of most of the gold in this party, being the rogue, is not so keen on spending money yet. She thinks it could be better spent elsewhere. So the party has this idea that they'll basically double time it to try to get to the Jade Forest on foot. So I'm like, okay, well, this is you're going to be pressing it for time, but let's do this. So on the first day, they kind of double press, and they set up camp on the first night. They're kind of exhausted. And David, who plays the Dragonborn Barbarian, is on watch. Someone was on watch before him, but they heard like animal sounds, but nothing unusual. I mean, wolves howling in the distance and that type of stuff, because they're kind of marching through these plains. But then Dave, his character, the Dragonborn, is on guard, and I say go ahead and do a check, and I do a random encounter, and I roll for brigands. So as he's keeping watch, he sees some brigands in the distance, and he's like, oh crap, we're gonna have some trouble here. So he puts out the fire, and he's trying to wake everyone up to let them know that the brigands are coming. And essentially the brigands attack, party attacks them, big fight breaks out. They defeat the brigands easily. And then Dave asks, well, where did these guys come from? Like, they have to have a base somewhere. They didn't just pop up somewhere. And as a DM, I'm only thinking this is just a random encounter. There's no base anywhere around here. But then Dave asked me, he's like, hey, if I search them, will I find a map? I was like, you know what? Roll high enough, and maybe you'll find a map to their base, whatever. And keep in mind, I've got zero planned out. I'm not anticipating he's going to roll high enough to find a map or any kind of indication where these brigands might have come from. So Dave rolls, and he rolls, I believe it was either a 19 or a nat 20. Now I'm stuck. I've said, hey, if you roll high enough, sure, there's a map on someone. So they find a map on the brigand leader, and they take a look at it. Now, keep in mind, I've given them a deadline of 3 days to go save this dryad. So when they look at the map, I explain, this is me as a DM. I kind of backed myself into a corner now because I said, sure, if you roll high enough, there's a map. I say, hey, you know what, you do find a map, you kind of glance at the map, look at the landmarks, it looks like that they are a day away, indicating that if they go for this, they're not going to have a lot of time. But then they start debating it, and they said, well, we've only traveled a day out of the Ivory Coast. This is like kind of a half a day away, and if there's treasure to be found, we can get more treasure, go back to the Ivory Coast, buy horses, and ride to the Jade Forest to save the Dryad. And so this is their plan, and they do this day. They go over, and they encounter more brigands. And so I'm literally making this up on the spot. That there's this hill that they find, and there's like a secret base on the top that it's a lever that moves with a staircase that leads down into this small hill where there's a brigand fort. I am literally making this up on the moment, because this is what my players want to do. They've marched this extra half day to this base that they found in hopes of finding gold and treasure. But I'm not, as a DM, I'm not just going to give them gold and treasure. I'm not just going to say, you found their base, it's empty. Obviously, these brigands have been scattered around now. They're ambushing different people as they pass around. So when they get there, they encounter a few other brigands that are, guarding this little hill. And then when they get inside, they encounter a brigand captain. So I've basically made all of this up spur of the moment. But I don't think when I did it, any of my players knew that I was making this up. I felt like I was being spontaneous enough because I wasn't flipping through the monster manual or anything like that. I was just, oh yeah, you ride for a day and a half, do watch, whatever, get to this hill. I was just winging the whole thing. So they fight some brigands on the outside who are guarding it. They get inside, fight a few more brigands, and then there's a brigand captain. So I'm basically giving him this like magic weapon to say, ooh, he's kind of tough. So he's got this gauntlet on and this magic sword that kind of just fires up. really, really strong guy, and the party is fighting him, and they actually have a difficult time fighting him, but they do manage to beat him. They do find some treasure chests inside this base, obviously, because these brigands have been robbing people for a long time. And one of them is locked, so the cleric decides, you know what, I wonder if the gauntlet has something to do with unlocking it. So she slaps on the gauntlet, and right then and there I think, you know what, I'm going to make this gauntlet cursed. So now she's put on this gauntlet and discovers that the sword summons to her hand, and she can't take off the gauntlet. It does nothing to open the chest, but now she has this cursed gauntlet on her hand. Spur of the moment entirely. Everything from them going to these brigands, to the gauntlet, to the captain, all of this was spur of the moment. So I thought it was very important that even though I'd given them this quest to go save this dryad, that they had rolled high enough to find a map, that they had wanted to go find where these brigands were. I wanted to ensure that these players had free choice to do what they want. But, so they've beaten the brigands. They have a couple chests that they can't open because they're locked magically and stuff like that. So they think, we'll come back to this one day. So they leave with the gold that they have acquired from the brigands, from the chests that they're able to open. They get to back to the Ivory Coast. They haggle for some horses and steeds and donkeys and stuff like that, depending on the player's size. Eventually, they begin riding back to the Jade Forest. Because of the half-day travel over here, the half-day travel back, by the time they get to the Jade Forest, it's been 4 days. So now the angel had said, be there in 3 days, because be there before 3 days, because on the third day the dryad will be sacrificed. So as they're riding to the Jade Forest has this giant tree that sits in the middle of it, towers over all the other trees by several hundred feet. The base of it is massive. It's this massive, massive tree in the middle of the Jade Forest, and this is where the dryad has always called home. So it's always been very easy to identify where this dryad is located in the Jade Forest. So as the party's riding through the Jade Forest, they notice that leaves are falling off the trees, and everything looks kind of sickly and bad, as if the whole forest is dying as they're riding through it. And the party begins to realize that that little side quest to the brigand base may have cost them something. So as they get to the main tree, the big tree in the center, they find that the dryad has been pinned to the tree. Her throat has been slit, and there's also a unicorn whose throat has been slit and the horn has been cut off. What happens is they start to look around and figure out, oh, we've messed up, we've shown up too late. Several centaurs show up and say, what are you doing here? Are you part of the cultists who killed the dryad? And basically the party is now speaking with these centaurs, trying to figure out what's happened. And they learn from the centaurs, when they slit the dryad's throat, pinned her to the tree, these cultists, they unleashed a fallen angel. So it turns out they discover that this giant tree was actually an arrow or spear from one of the gods that had tried to pin down this evil angel, this formerly good angel who had turned to the dark side and, basically slammed an arrow, slammed a spear, slammed some kind of weapon to pierce this angel and magically hold him down into the world. With the dryad slain, this angel is broken free, and when the unicorn came, the angel basically slit the unicorn's throat, snapped off the horn, stabbed the unicorn through the heart, and turned the unicorn into a nightmare. So now this fallen angel has this nightmare and has ridden off to the west. Now the important thing is, I wanted these characters to basically be able to move freely, as I said. It's important for me to never railroad the game. So when they went for the brigands, I knew at that moment, while they're doing this, they're going to run out of time, and I'm going to do something with the dryad. So I wanted the party to be able to move freely, but there was a consequence for their action. One of the things I enjoy doing is making sure that my world feels alive, that these cultists are not going to sit there and wait and be like, we were going to do it on the third day, but the moon wasn't right. It wasn't just, coming through the clouds enough, so we waited a fourth day. Oh no, the adventurers showed up and stopped us. My world continues to move, and things continue to happen all the time. So by going after the brigands, they had failed their mission to save the dryad. And now this angel is broken free. Now even though this was never my intention. The intention was that they were going to, originally, this whole campaign idea was that they would show up, they would stop the cultists, along into the woods. They would fight various, low-level demons like lemurs or whatever they're called, and stuff like that, and know that, oh, you know what, something shady's going on. There's like some kind of devil work happening here, and that they would ideally save the dryad. The dryad would be thankful, the unicorn would be thankful and say, if you ever need anything from the woods, we'd be glad to help you, blah, 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 blah. That didn't happen. And even though I had this whole plan laid out, like all my encounters were laid out as to what they were going to encounter along the way to go save the dryad, all of that changed the moment they went after the brigands. I wanted them to definitely feel like free and not railroaded, but there was a consequence for that. And so now, because of this fallen angel breaking free, as they were fighting the brigands, I was thinking this through. The fallen angel will now be their big nemesis. This is going to be the person that they're now going to have to chase down. And he is this great evil who, as he goes west, will be spreading chaos and destruction and stuff like that. And so the party who's escorting this caravan from the Ivory Coast to Ridgecrest, now they know that this caravan is also heading west in the same direction that this fallen angel is headed. And it's also where there's this whole area called the Broken Lands in my world that was once a vast forest, now just reduced to just sand. And there's a secret here to be found. I'm not going to go over what that secret is, but they are interested in going west because supposedly a wizard has told them that what they need to break the curse on the cleric's gauntlet is in somewhere in the west. It needs ancient magic because the gauntlet is ancient magic. A regular remove curse isn't going to work. They need something special to snap the connection between the gauntlet and the cleric. So now this party now has this whole adventure where they're going after this fallen angel. They're looking for something out in the west to break the curse of the gauntlet on the cleric. The gauntlet, who is inherently evil, has done things during this campaign where when it senses great evil, when the cleric attempts to heal a party member, it in turn changes the direction of the healing spell and heals this great evil. So for example, they were fighting a knoll that I had created called the Den Mother. She had basically taken over this cave, and she had gnolls everywhere. They were literally a problem on this small defenseless town. And she was greatly evil. She was a shaman. She had all this magic behind her. So when the party eventually encountered her, they were taking some beatings. And when Jessica's character tried to heal one of the party members, I rolled, and it was basically on a d20, and it says at 15 or higher, the gauntlet will attempt to heal whatever it senses as great evil. So it ended up healing the Den Mother, which made the fight last a little bit longer. Is it the angel that's punishing them for being more driven by greed to get gold versus saving this dryad? It's stuff like that I enjoy doing, is giving the players that freedom to do whatever they want. Despite what I have planned, a DM's hardest skill, I think, is being able to improvise, because your players are always going to do something you're not predicting, and do not railroad them into the adventure. One thing I'd like to talk about is when I was DMing for Charles, his wife Tammy, for Matt, for Sammy, and for Sammy's husband Jake, and my wife Amy, I was doing the Rise of the Tiamat campaign. And as I was doing that, I felt very constrained as to what I could do, because it's very formulated as to where you have to go and what you have to do and what is next. So and this is, the adventure is amazing if you read it, but for me as a DM, I felt very restricted. The party had to do certain things to be able to keep succeeding forward. It was very hard to improvise anything in that. So my preference, even though I do buy all of those adventure books, because I can sometimes glean stuff off of these adventure books that I will use in my own campaign, but I'll customize it completely and not use the actual campaign book. Something a DM needs to learn to do is be ready to improvise. They have to be able to ready to think on their feet, what's going to come next. My party's done something I've not anticipated. Don't railroad them. That takes away the character freedom that they probably feel that they should have. Like, I'm being forced to go into this cave because that's where the adventure goes. if you can, improvise as much as you can when the party does something unpredictable. I think it'll go a long way in creating an adventure that everyone will remember. And just as a side note, I mentioned it in the ending of my other video, I also do a campaign for several people who've never played D&D at work. So this consists of, we have Mike, who plays a human paladin, I believe it is, and then we have Chris Cronkite, who plays a dwarf cleric, and then we have Aaron, who also plays a dwarf cleric, and then we have Tim, who plays a elf wizard, and then we have Dave, or David, not the same David from my other campaign, but this is Tim's friend David, who plays a dragonborn bard, which is an odd combination. But so, because they were playing in my D&D world, in their campaign, one of the adventures that they got is for Mike, Chris, and this group of people from work. They were at this town that had recently been attacked by dragons, and the town had been decimated. So they were looking for supplies. One of the adventures they had to go is go into this mine, find out what killed all these miners, and basically make the mine safe again, so we can start harvesting resources like steel and coin and stuff like that they can use to help start rebuilding the town. Then they got another adventure that says, hey, you know what? A bunch of our guys are afraid to go to the Jade Forest. Like, something weird is happening. There's no animal sounds, nothing coming from the woods, and they're too freaked out to go. So the party has now been sent to go to the Jade Forest. Now, this has taken place after Anita's group has, let the fallen angel out and stuff like that. So now I'm making my world a living world by having this other party that I'm DMing for basically interacting with something that's happened. So when the party gets there, there's a couple of things that are going on. They're going through the woods. They encounter a few unusual creatures that are that you would not typically find in woods. They find a displacer beast that seems out of place, but very aggressive, very hungry, really beats the smack out of this party. So they're forced to heal and stuff like that. And then they eventually encounter what looks to be a dryad. There's, as they get closer to what I call the father tree, the main tree in the center, they see that the woods have just corrupt. Everything looks evil and dead and wasteful. But they get towards the big main tree, and there's this circular ring around it. And there's a woman in the center, she's trying to hold this barrier around her. And so they go to her, and she explains that one of her dryad sisters was killed, and that she is trying to fight off the infection of evil that has spread in these woods. And so the party has immediately taken interest, and they're like, well, what can we do to stop this? Because we have some guys from this other town that are trying to harvest wood here, but they're too freaked out. And she explains what you want to do is there's a band of demons and cultists that are in these woods that are trying to basically put an end to this and kill the main tree and basically destroy the woods. And so she explains they're up north, but just beware of the one with the white hair. And I do explain that she has animals around her like deer and other forest animals that seem to be finding sanctuary in this place, and that she is petting a rabbit while she talks to them. Now, if you remember the old D&D cartoon that used to be on back in the 80s, there was a thing that came on with Venger where they said, beware of the white hair. And it turns out it wasn't actually white hair as in hair, but actually a white hair as in a rabbit. So I had taken some inspiration from that D&D cartoon, and this dryad says, beware of the one with the white hair, as she's stroking this rabbit. So the party's like, okay, so there's a witch there that has white hair. She's the one that we really want to take down. She's the leader of these demons. We take her down, the rest fall apart. So they go and scout ahead, and they see this demon, and they basically surprise it, attack it, and kill it. It seems to be a Homilictus, it's a smaller type demon. And they think, oh, this is probably a demon that goes with the witch. It's like one of hers. And so as they go through, they encounter another demon and basically go back and forth, as this demon is saying that they're a demon, and they're saying, no, you're the demon. And they do this banter back and forth, trying to figure out what's going on, why this demon sees them as the demon and why they see it as the demon. Well, eventually they figure out, wait a minute, so you're not a demon, you're actually a centaur, which happened to be the same centaurs that had told Anita about the fallen angel and stuff like that. So they figure out, wait a minute, so if you're not the demons, then who is the dryad back there that sent us here to basically kill you? And they explained, well, that's not a dryad, that's a hag. And what it is, it's a green hag. Green hags in D&D are attracted to, like, great things of pain, you know, catastrophes and stuff like that, that are an immense amount of pain. And what could be more painful than a dryad and a unicorn being killed in order to release great evil? This hag has come along, and basically she is what's responsible for the things like the displacer beast and the basilisks and all these other weird creatures that are out there. And she's also responsible for making the centaurs look like demons. What she's done is she's tainted the water supply, so when these centaurs apply their war paint on their bodies, you know, as a symbol of we're ready for war, it creates an illusion that they are actually demons. So when the party had interacted with the hag, she had touched one of them, and you know, she said, I thank you greatly, and at that point had touched them to basically put an illusion on them that made them appear as demons. So the idea was the hag would take more joy that the party is killing centaurs, and then the centaurs are killing the party, because, you know, everyone thinks that they're demons, and the hag would just thrive off of this. So by giving my original party, Anita's group, the freedom to do what they want and go create, you know, go chase after these brigands and find this base and get this gold and get horses and all this other stuff, releasing this great evil, I've now created a story for Anita's group that they're going to chase this fallen angel. At the same time, for my other D&D group, for the work group, I've created an adventure where now they are fighting a hag to save a forest. So because I was willing to improvise, and improvise quickly, and not like flip through the player's handbook and take the players out of the moment, I've now created a brand new adventure that I did not plan for at all, with this fallen angel and this nightmare that the party's going to go chase, and eventually, you know, fight minions and stuff like that before they actually ever probably fight him. And then I've also created another great adventure that really surprised the party when they learned the truth that it was a hag that had been manipulating them and that they had killed actually a young centaur who was a scout. The party freaked out. They were like, oh, that was a good twist, because they sincerely thought it was a dryad. At the whole time I had been selling it that it was dryad because I had these animals and stuff like that, all of which were illusions. All these animals were actually dead in this circle. So when the party came back to attack the hag with the centaurs coming in from the other side, they saw the truth. The hag realized that her game had been up, so now she just dropped the illusion and saw everything for what it was. So a very important thing to do, allow your characters to do what they want. Improvise, let your players do what they want, and I think everyone will have a much more enjoyable game. Now, I always like using examples for what I'm talking about, because that shows I'm not just talking about, you know, let your characters do what they want, you can improvise. I'm showing an example of when I've let this happen and when I've had to improvise. And I think that adds to some depth as to what I'm saying, and hopefully shows that this is possible. You know, you do not have to railroad characters. Let them have their freedom of choice. So that's it for now. I'll shut up. It's almost as long as the other video. I really apologize. I've got a couple other videos that I've already got ideas for. I plan to try to release these like once a week, maybe sooner, I don't know. But if you like it, subscribe wherever the subscribe button is, if it's anywhere on this video or just down below. Share it, post it on forums, tell friends about it, post it on Facebook. I would love it, because I'm not doing anything to further really advertise this other than me posting on my own Facebook and a couple of Facebook groups I'm on. So if you could help spread the word, you enjoy what I'm doing, it'd be greatly appreciated.